Welcome to the Orange County Convention Center in Orlando, Florida, the site of our Republican presidential debate. It is being sponsored by Fox News and Google in conjunction with the Florida Republican Party. Besides watching us on Fox News Channel, we are being streamed on youtube.com/Fox News and heard on Fox News Radio. Now, let's meet the candidates. Texas Governor Rick Perry. Former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney. Congressman Ron Paul. Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich. Businessman Herman Cain. Former Senator Rick Santorum. Former Utah Governor John Huntsman. And former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson. Joining me at the big desk tonight, my Fox News colleagues Megyn Kelly and Chris Wallace. With our partner Google, we have some new features we'd like to quickly tell you about. Throughout the night, we'll be playing some questions from viewers who posted their video and text questions on YouTube. We will also be polling viewers on key issues while the debate is underway, and we'll have updates from our own Shannon Breen. Our rules are similar to previous Fox debates: 1 minute for answers, 30 seconds for follow-ups, and after an outpouring of emails from dog owners who said the last bell sounded like their doorbell, we have a new sound for the candidates if they run too long. Thank you to Google for that sound. We hope after a string of debates, we don't have to use that too much. Now, we received thousands and thousands of questions from around the world on different topics. Each one of these pins on the map is another question, from healthcare and immigration to foreign policy and social issues. But the highest percentage of questions dealt with jobs, the economy, debt, and government spending. And that was even before today's major market slide. What makes this debate unique is that not only did you submit the questions, you voted on them, letting everyone know which questions you think the candidates should be asked tonight. We received questions from all 50 states, but our first question comes from Dave Maldo, right here in Orlando, Florida.
As a small business owner, one of the big obstacles I have in growing my business in today's economy is having the confidence and incentive to go out and hire new employees. I'm wondering what each one of our candidates would propose to do as president to help incent small businesses like mine to hire new employees and to confidently grow our business in this troublesome economic environment.
Governor Perry, I'll put that question to you.
Yes, sir. Well, Rick Scott's sitting right over there, and he and I compete every day with trying to get jobs into our states. And what we've done in the state of Texas over the course of the last decade is to lower that tax burden on the small businessmen and women, have a regulatory climate that is fair and predictable, and a sweeping tort reform that we passed in 2003 that told the personal injury trial lawyers, don't come to Texas because you're not going to be suing our doctors frivolously. That's the way you get the government off of the back of small businessmen and women, and that's the way you free up those small business entrepreneurs where they know that they can risk their capital and have a chance to have a return on investment. If it'll work in the state of Texas, it'll work in Washington, D.C., and that's exactly what I'm going to bring to Washington when I go there in in January of 2013.
Governor Perry, the thing we heard from most people who submitted questions is they wanted specifics, they wanted details. Most of the people on the stage, opponents, have a specific jobs plan on paper that people can read. Where's your jobs plan?
Well, you'll see a more extensive jobs plan, but the fact of the matter is you look at the state of Texas and see what we've done there from the standpoint of lowering that tax burden, the regulatory climate in the state of Texas. We've taken those types of regulations off of the throat of small business operators. People understand that the state of Texas during the last decade, something special happened there. It was the #1 state for relocation. for 5 years in a row, and we plan on keeping it that way, Rick.
Governor Romney, you have a specific plan. In recent days, actually, the top rising search of your name on Google actually dealt with people searching for specifics of that plan. But a Wall Street Journal editorial recently called your 59-point economic plan, quote, surprisingly timid and tactical considering our economic predicament. Specifically, the editorial board had a problem with you picking the $200,000 income threshold for eliminating interest, dividends, and capital gains taxes, writing that you are afraid of President Obama's, quote, class warfare rhetoric. How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, let's go back and talk. Microphone on? Can we get the mic on? There we go. Let's go back and talk about the question that Dave asked, which is how to get small business a break. And President Obama has done everything wrong. I happen to believe that to create jobs, it helps to have had a job, and I have. And having had a job in small business and in big business, I know what you have to do is make America the most attractive place in the world for business, and that means our corporate tax rates, our employer tax rates have to be competitive. Small business pays at the highest rate. We need to get those rates down to globally competitive levels. Number two, government and regulators have to be allies of business, not foes. Number three, we've got to become energy secure in this country. Number four, we have to have trade policies that work for us, not just for the other guys, and crack down on cheaters like China. And my list goes on in my 59 points. But finally, let me tell you this. I know there are some that say, look, we should lower taxes for the very highest income people. Other folks have different plans. My view is very simple. The people that have been hurt most by the president's economy, the Obama economy, has been the middle class. That's why I cut taxes for the middle class.
So, sir, what do you consider rich? Is $500,000 rich, $1 million rich? At what income does someone reach your definition of rich?
I don't try and define who's rich and who's not rich. I want everybody in America to be rich. I want people in this country to have opportunity. And I want everybody to have the kind of opportunities that we on this stage have had. I want people in America to recognize that the future will be brighter for their kids than it was for them. I know that the president's party wants to try and take from some people and give to the others. That isn't the way to lift America. The way to lift America is to give people opportunity and to let them enjoy the freedoms that have made us the envy of the world.
Governor, thank you very much. Occasionally through the debate, we will ask the same questions we ask the candidates to you at home. The first one, what is your definition of rich? You can vote on that answer at youtube.com/Fox News. We'll bring some of those results throughout the show with Shannon Bream. Now to my colleague, Megyn Kelly.
Thanks, Brett. Congresswoman Bachmann, after the last debate, a young member of the California Tea Party said he didn't feel that he had had his question fully answered. And it's a question that received the most votes on Google and YouTube on the list as well. The answer to his question is a number. And the question was, quote, out of every dollar I earn, how much do you think that I deserve to keep?
And after the debate, I talked to that young man and I said, I wish I could have answered that question because I want to tell you what my answer is. I think you earned every dollar. You should get to keep every dollar that you earn. That's your money. That's not the government's money. That's the whole point. Barack Obama seems to think that when we earn money, it belongs to him, and we're lucky just to keep a little bit of it. I don't think that at all. I think when people make money, it's their money. Obviously, we have to give money back to the government so that we can run the government, but we have to have a completely different mindset, and that mindset is the American people are the genius of this economy. It certainly isn't government that's the genius, and that's the two views. President Obama has embraced a view of government-directed temporary fixes and gimmicks. They don't work. He's destroyed the economy. What does work is private solutions that are permanent in the private sector. That gives certainty. That will grow our economy.
Senator Santorum, next question is for you. As this map from Google depicts, 22 states in the U.S. are right-to-work states. In the other 28, if a business is a union shop, you have to join the union if you want to work there. Now, this next question is one of the top voted questions online, and it comes to us via YouTube from Yates Wilburn of Hilton Head, South Carolina.
With unemployment numbers remaining above 9%, union issues such as the National Labor Relations Board lawsuit against Boeing and several union battles in state legislatures across the country have become incredibly relevant to the national discussion. For all the candidates, would you support some form of a federal right-to-work law allowing all workers to choose whether or not to join a union?
That's for you, Senator Santorum.
I think the most important area that we have to focus in on when it comes to unions is public employee unions. That's the area of unionization that's growing the fastest, and it's costing us the most money. We've seen these battles on the state level where unions have really bankrupted states, from pension plans to here in the federal level, for example, 30 to 40% union employees make above their private sector equivalents. I do not believe that state, federal, or local workers, unions, should be involved in unions. And I would actually support a bill that says that we should not have public employee unions for the purposes of wages and benefits to be negotiated.
Gingrich, this next one's for you. You've criticized extending unemployment benefits, saying that you are, quote, opposed to giving people money for doing nothing. Benefits have already been extended to 99 weeks, and they are set to expire soon. If you were president today, would you extend unemployment benefits? And if not, how do you justify that to the millions of unemployed Americans who are looking in earnest and whose families are depending on those checks?
Well, what I've said is that I think unemployment compensation should be tied directly to a training program. And if you don't have a job and you need help, then in order for us to give you the help, you should sign up for a business-led training program so that 99 weeks becomes an investment in human capital, giving us the best trained workforce in the world so you can get a job. But I believe it is fundamentally wrong to give people money for 99 weeks for doing nothing. That's why we had welfare reform. Frankly, the easiest thing for Congress to do if the president sends up a proposed extension is to allow all 50 states to experiment at the state level with developing a mandatory training component of unemployment compensation, so you'd have 50 parallel experiments and not pretend that Washington knows best or that Washington can solve the problem by itself. But I believe deeply people should not get money for doing nothing.
Now I turn to my colleague, Chris Wallace. Chris.
Brett, thank you. Good evening, candidates. Governor Huntsman, in Utah, you offered millions of dollars in tax credits to promote clean energy. In June, you said that as president, you would subsidize natural gas companies. How is that different from the Obama administration, which gave the solar panel company Solyndra $500 million in federal loan guarantees? And as we all know, that company ended up bankrupt, and we taxpayers ended up on the hook.
Chris, first of all, it's an honor to be here in Orlando, home of my wife, the greatest human being I've known in 28 years. We've learned some important lessons as this economy has spun out of control. We have some hard decisions to make, and we're not going to fix the problem. We're not going to be able to bring our people together in America until we fix the economy. I'm convinced that part of the divide that we're experiencing in the United States, which is unprecedented, it's unnatural, and it's un-American, is because we're divided economically. Too few jobs, too few opportunities. We have learned that subsidies don't work and that we can no longer afford them. I believe that we can move toward renewable energy, but we're going to have a bridge product. Everybody wants to draw from the sun and draw from the wind, and I'm here to tell you that eventually that will make sense, but today the economics don't work. We need something like natural gas. I put forward an energy independence program along with tax reform and regulatory reform. Just by drawing from natural gas, for example, you're looking at 500,000 to 1 million jobs over the next 5 years. It is ours, it's affordable, it has important national security implications, and we should begin the conversion process.
But just a 30-second follow-up, sir. In June, you told the New Hampshire union leader, as president, you would subsidize the natural gas industry.
I would be willing to begin an effort so long as there was a rapid phase-out. I do not like subsidies. I do not like long-term subsidies. But if there was some sort of way to get the ball rolling with a quick phase-out, I would be in favor of that.
Mr. Kaine, I want to follow up on your 999 plan for economic growth. That's a 9%. Well, they seem to already know what it is, but for the few who don't, it's a 9% flat corporate tax, a 9% flat income tax, and a new 9% national sales tax. Now, conservatives usually say, repeal the income tax before you impose a new tax. Isn't there a danger with your 999 plan with these three taxes that some government down the road after President Kane is going to increase three forms of taxation on Americans?
No, there's no danger in that. And first, let me answer Dave's question with the 999 plan. Unfortunately, nobody up here answered this question. He wanted to know, as a small businessman, what are we going to do in order to help him as a small business person? I have walked in Dave's shoes. This economy is on life support. That's why my 999 plan is a bold solution. It starts with throw out the current tax code and pass the 9% business flat tax, the 9% personal income tax, and the 9% national sales tax. This is the most important part. It eliminates or replaces corporate income tax, personal income tax, capital gains tax, as well as the estate tax. Then it treats all businesses the same. And the people who are paying only payroll tax, 15.3, that 15.3 they don't have to pay. Now they only have to pay that 9%. And unlike Governor Romney's plan, my plan throws out the old one. He's still hooked to the current tax code. That dog won't hunt.
If your name is mentioned in an answer, you get 30 seconds to respond. Governor Romney.
That's fine. I put my plan out. I want to make it very clear that my intent is to help the people who've been most hurt by President Obama's economy. And the people who've been most hurt are the middle-income families of America. And that's why my plan says that if middle-income families want to save their money, anybody earning under $200,000, and not pay any taxes on interest, dividends, or capital gains. Zero tax on their savings. That's the plan I'm for, and I'll get that done in my first year. Thank you.
Congressman Paul, I want to show you the video that got the most votes of all the video questions submitted to YouTube, and this one comes, as you can see, from Brandy and Michael in Spencer, Indiana.
There's growing concern among Americans about the size and the scope of the federal government and its infringement upon state and individual rights.
If you're elected president, how do you plan to restore the 10th Amendment, hold the federal government only to those enumerated powers in the Constitution, and allow states to govern themselves?
Congressman, what's your answer for Brandy and Michael?
Well, obviously it would take more than one individual, but the responsibility of the president would be to veto every single bill that violates the 10th Amendment. That would be the solution.
Anything else there? You got a little time left.
Well, I'll tell you what, that is the subject that is crucial because government is too big in Washington, D.C. It's run away. We have no controls of spending, taxes, regulations, no control in the Federal Reserve printing money. So if we want government, whether it's medical care or whatever, it's proper to do it at the local level as well as our schools. But there is no authority in the Constitution to do so much of what we're doing. There's no authority for them to run our schools, no authority to control our economy, and no authority to control us as individuals on what we do with our personal lives.
Thank you, Congressman.
Okay, we got to the full answer there at the end. Governor Johnson, same question to you about the 10th Amendment. With this added, you are an outspoken libertarian. What makes you a better choice for libertarian Republicans than Congressman Paul?
I'm not going to presume to make that assumption, but I would like to say that I do bring a unique perspective to this stage. I started a one-man handyman business in Albuquerque in 1974 and grew it to over 1,000 employees. I have run for 2 political offices in my life, governor of New Mexico and re-election. I promised to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. I promise to veto legislation where expenditures exceed revenue. And if anybody doubts my willingness to veto bills, I think I vetoed more bills than any governor in the history of the United States. I think I vetoed more bills than all the other governors in the country combined. Add to that throwing out the entire federal tax system and replacing it with a consumption tax, the fair tax, which would absolutely reboot the American economy because it does away with the corporate tax to create tens of millions of jobs in this country.
Governor Johnson, thank you. We'll be coming back to the issue of the economy throughout this debate tonight. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we'll also be checking in with our own Shannon Bream throughout the night to get real-time updates from people watching. Shannon.
Hi, Brett. Well, this is the most interactive debate ever, and it's thanks to our partner, Google. You can go to youtube.com/Fox News. What happens there is folks can see the debate streaming live, but also to the right of the screen, all night long, we are sending out questions so we can get your answers at home, and you can participate and weigh in. Brett, a little bit earlier, asked Governor Romney how he defines rich. It's a question we put to folks out on the internet as well, and we've got the results. Here's the question. I define rich as someone having an annual income higher than 100,000, 13% of you weighed in there. 250,000, 22%. 500,000, 22%. And the majority went with $1 million annual income. That defines you as rich. 44% of those who voted. We'll be going through all kinds of polls and data on the commercials. Join us at youtube.com/Fox News. Brett, back to you.
Thanks, Shannon. After the break, we will be tackling foreign policy, government spending. Shannon will have more on that, too, and also the issue of immigration. Now, here for a preview of what's to come, let's take a look at what's called a word cloud. It shows the words that were used most often in all the questions you asked about immigration. The bigger the word, the more often it was used. The biggest word in this cloud, as you can see, is illegal. Back after a short break.
Thank you so much for joining our debate coverage here on youtube.com/Fox News. I am joined by a couple of folks, pros, to help us break down the information that you're sending us by being so interactive online. We've got Steve Grove, who is the head of news and politics for Google and YouTube, breaking down all kinds of raw data for us. And for analysis, you recognize him from Power Play Live every day. He's our digital politics editor, Chris Starwall. Gentlemen, thank you. Let's get right to it. All right. First of all, what we're talking about is candidate names and questions about foreign policy. Tell us what you've analyzed.
Yeah, so Shannon, we took a look at all the questions submitted about the foreign policy issue and said which candidate's name was mentioned most in a question about foreign policy. As you see on the graphic behind you, Ron Paul, far and away the candidate who gets the most mentions when it comes to foreign policy questions.
All right. So with that data in mind, Chris, that seems to be the issue he likes to talk about the most.
Well, let me say one thing first about that. Ron Paul just blew up the spot. He just blew up the entire debate. With that answer on the 10th Amendment, he blew it up. So what you see in this poll is this. Folks at home, I'm sure what's going on right now, they said, I love what that guy just said. I mean, he spoke to the heart of the Republican issue right now, and they say, I love what that guy just said. But then, later in this debate, Ron Paul is going to say something about foreign policy that's going to have those same Republicans that got all fired up about that answer go, nukes for Iran do what? And they're going to back off a little bit. So it's the double-edged sword for Congressman Paul. There's a lot of support in those 79, but I bet a lot of the people have concerns because they like his domestic message, but it's harder for Republicans who like a strong defense to take it the other way.
Yeah, they want to get some answers from him. All right, you also looked at another hot topic and how that relates to candidate names as well.
We looked at health care, actually. And you see behind you, Mitt Romney in this category mentioned most when viewers are asking questions about health care, far and away more than the other candidates.
Yeah, and Chris, not a surprise there. He's got a lot of questions to answer about Romney Care. It's going to continue to come up. How well has he been handling it so far?
Well, look, you know, he needs a conservative answer on Romney Care. This is a conservative party. It's a conservative primary. The early states are conservative. He needs an answer that enthuses conservatives. Now, you see Governor Romney coming out. He's blazing a little bit. You saw his first answers. He wants to engage. He wants to be tough. He hasn't taken any shots at Rick Perry yet. That's coming, I promise. But right now, he's trying to set himself up as a tough guy with a little swagger of his own. But eventually, he has to pair that with an answer on his Massachusetts health care law that includes a government mandate to purchase private health insurance or be enrolled in a government program that sounds good to conservatives. The closest he can come is saying, let's get rid of the freeloaders and force people to pay their fair share.
All right, and very quickly, we want to get to something called a word cloud. Steve,
Yes,
tell us what
a
it
word
is
cloud.
and what you looked at, and Chris will get your reaction.
Word cloud is a visualization of all of the words submitted on a certain topic. The bigger the word, the more often it was mentioned. This word cloud behind you is all of the words submitted around Rick Perry's name in the questions. The bigger words here are the questions that, or the words rather, that people use the most when they ask a question for Rick Perry.
All right, Chris, you got a lot to work with there.
Texas. That's
It's
what
big.
you see back there. It's big, and that's big. Rick Perry's first answer was basically, what are you going to do about jobs? Texas. It's basically a one-word answer. I did it there. I can do it in America.
All right, back to Brett and the debates.
Good evening. I'm Florida Governor Rick Scott. Because of Florida's size and diversity, our state represents the very pulse of our great nation. Not only will Florida be a must-win for a Republican to be our party's nominee, Florida is a must-win on the road to the White House. It is my belief that the next president will be the candidate who both articulates a plan for getting America's economy back on the right track and inspires confidence in the hearts and minds of all Americans. Good luck to all the candidates. This debate is a partnership with Fox News and Google. I thank the men and women of Fox News and Google for choosing Florida, and I thank all of you for being part of this exciting event.
Thank you, Governor Scott, and welcome back to Orlando, Florida, and the Republican presidential debate. My colleague Megyn Kelly will take us through the next round of questions on government spending and debt.
Thanks, Brett. Governor Perry, Governor Romney has been hammering you on your idea of turning Social Security back to the states repeatedly. Can you explain specifically how 50 separate Social Security systems are supposed to work?
Well, let me just say first, for those people that are on Social Security today, for those people that are approaching Social Security, they don't have anything in the world to worry about. We have made a solemn oath to the people of this country that that Social Security program in place today will be there for them. Now, it's not the first time that Mitt's been wrong on some issues before. And the bottom line is we never said that we were going to move this back to the states. What we said was we ought to have as one of the options the state employees and the state retirees, they being able to go off of the current system onto one that the states would operate themselves. As a matter of fact, in Massachusetts, his home state, almost 96% of the people who are on that program, retirees and state people, are off of the Social Security program. So having that option out there to have the states, Louisiana does it, almost every state has their state employees and the retirees that are options to go off of Social Security. That makes sense. It's an option that we should have.
Governor Romney, you're satisfied with that?
Well, it's different than what the governor put in his book just 6 months ago, and what you said on your interviews following the book. So I don't know. There's a Rick Perry out there that's saying that almost to quote, it says that the federal government shouldn't be in the pension business, that it's unconstitutional, and it should be returned to the states. So you better find that Rick Perry and get him to stop saying that. Now, my own view is that we have to make it very, very clear that Social Security is a responsibility of the federal government, not the state governments. We're going to have one plan, and we're going to make sure that it's fiscally sound and stable. And I'm absolutely committed to keeping Social Security working. I put in my book that I wrote a couple of years ago a plan for how we can do that and to make sure Social Security is stable, not just for the next 25 years, but for the next 75. Thank you.
And I would like to respond to that.
Go ahead, Governor Perry.
Speaking of books and talking about being able to have things in your books and back and forth, and your economic advisor talked about Romney Care and how that was an absolute bust, and it was exactly what Obamacare was all about. As a matter of fact, between books, your hard copy book, you said that it was exactly what the American people needed to have that Romney Care given to them as you had in Massachusetts. Then in your paperback, you took that line out. So speaking of not getting it straight in your book, sir, that wouldn't be a good one for
you. Governor Romney?
It's kind of badminton.
Governor Perry? Governor Perry, we were talking about Social Security, but if you want to talk about health care, I'm happy to do that.
We are going to have a round on health care.
I actually wrote my book And in my book, I said no such thing. What I said, actually, when I put my health care plan together, and I met with Dan Balls, for instance, of the Washington Post, he said, is this a plan that if you were president, you'd put on the nation? Have the whole nation adopt it? I said, absolutely not. I said, this is a state plan for a state. It is not a national plan. And it's fine for you to retreat from your own words in your own book, but please don't try and make me retreat from the words that I wrote in my book. I stand by what I wrote. I believe in what I did, and I believe that the people of this country can read my book and see exactly what it is. Thank you.
We got plenty of questions for all the other candidates up here tonight, but I want to stick with you on this one, Governor Romney. Congresswoman Bachmann has said that President Obama has, quote, ushered in socialism during his first term. Governor Perry says that this administration is, quote, hell-bent toward taking America toward a socialist country. When Speaker Gingrich was asked if he believes President Obama is a socialist, he responded, quote, sure, of course he is. Do you, Governor Romney, Governor Romney, believe that President Obama is a socialist?
Let me tell you the title that I want to hear said about President Obama, and that is former President Barack Obama. That's the title I want to hear. And let me tell you this, what President Obama is a big spending liberal. And he takes his political inspiration from Europe and from the socialist Democrats in Europe. Guess what? Europe isn't working in Europe. It's not going to work here. I believe in America. I believe in the opportunity and in the freedom that is American opportunity and freedom. I believe in free enterprise and capitalism. I believe government is too big. It's gone from 27% of our economy in the years of JFK to 37% of our economy. We have to rein in the scale of government, or we're not going to continue to be a free economy. I love this country. I spent my life in the private sector, not in government. I only spent 4 years as a governor. I didn't inhale. I'm a business guy. I'm going to get America working again because I believe in the principles that make America the hope of the earth. Thank you.
Governor Huntsman, this next one's for you. This week, President Obama proposed a tax hike on millionaires, saying that they need to pay their, quote, fair share. According to an August Gallup poll, 66% of American adults actually believe that a tax hike on the wealthy is a good idea to help tackle our mounting debt. Is there any scenario under which you could side with the 66% of people who believe that it is a good idea to raise taxes on millionaires?
We're not going to raise taxes. This is the worst time to be raising taxes, and everybody knows that. We need to grow. We need to be reminded of what Ronald Reagan told us so beautifully, that which is great about America, freedom. We need to reestablish freedom in the marketplace. We need to address our underlying structural problems that we have. And in order to do that, we're going to have to fix our taxes. And we put forward a program endorsed by the Wall Street Journal that phases out for individuals all the loopholes, all the deductions, and creates 3 rates, 8, 14, 23. On the corporate side, it phases out all of the corporate welfare, all of the subsidies, and it gets it from 35 to 25%. This is exactly where we need to be. We need to grow. We need to create jobs. This is not a point in time where we should be raising taxes. We need to fix the underlying structural problems in this economy. And until such time as we do, we're not going to provide the confidence to businesses who are looking to deploy capital in the marketplace and hire people. And that would be serious tax reform like I proposed and like I did in the state of Utah. And that would be structural reform as well, dealing with Dodd-Frank and repealing Obamacare, because they are presenting tremendous uncertainty to the marketplace right now.
Thank you, Governor. Mr. Kaine, this question was one of the top 10 video questions voted on by people online, and it comes to us from Lee Doran of Arlington, Virginia, via YouTube.
My question is, if you were forced to eliminate one department from the federal government, which one would you eliminate and why? Thank you.
The first department, if I were forced to eliminate a department, I would start with the EPA and start all over. It's out of control. Now I know that makes some people nervous, but the EPA has gone wild. The fact that they have a regulation that goes into effect January 1st, 2012 to regulate dust says that they've gone too far. So rather than try to fix it, eliminate all of the things that they have right now, and then start rebuilding a responsible EPA. Now, with the rest of my time, may I offer a solution for Social Security rather than continuing to talk about what you call it? I have proposed the Chilean model. It's been around 30 years and it works. It's a personal retirement account. And in the last 30 years, not only has Chile succeeded with that model, but 30 other countries have done so. I don't think we're doing a service to the American people to keep bantering about what you call it and what you don't call it. The solution is fix it.
Speaker Gingrich, every day the federal government takes in about $6 billion, but spends about 10. Right? So we borrow 40 cents of every dollar we spend. Now, I understand that you believe that if we modernize the federal government, then it'll help a lot. It'll save billions. But given the resistance that we've seen in Washington, the seeming intractable resistance we've seen in Washington to spending cuts, how can you possibly slash spending by 40%? How can you do it?
Well, the way you described the question, you can't.
Well, that's it.
I mean,
stick a fork in us.
If you assume Washington remains the way Washington is right now, it's all hopeless. We might as well buy Greek bonds and go down together.
How do you get us past that?
Well, next Thursday in Des Moines, I'm going to outline a 21st century contract with America. It's going to be far bolder, far deeper, far more profound than what we did in 1994 or what I helped Jack Kemp and Ronald Reagan do in 1980. It's important to remember, this month in the Reagan administration, September 1983, we created 1,100,000 new jobs. Obama's socialist policies, class warfare and bureaucratic socialism, we created 0 in August. I believe with leadership we can balance the budget. I did it for 4 consecutive years. We went from $2.2 trillion projected deficit over a decade to $2.7 trillion projected surplus when I left. I think it is doable, but it takes real leadership.
Thank you, Megan. The next question is for all of the candidates. It comes to us from Atlanta, Georgia, on the topic of education.
Hi, I'm Stella Lohman from Atlanta, Georgia. I've taught in both public and private schools and now as a substitute teacher. I see administrators more focused on satisfying federal mandates, retaining funding, and trying not to get sued, while the teachers are jumping through hoops, trying to serve up a one-size-fits-all education for their students. What, as president, would you seriously do about what I consider a massive overreach of big government into the classroom? Thank you.
That topic is for all candidates, and to get everyone to weigh in, 30 seconds each, please. Governor Johnson.
I'm promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. That's a 43% reduction in federal spending. I am going to promise to advocate the abolishment of the Federal Department of Education. The Federal Department of Education gives each state 11 cents out of every dollar that every state spends, but it comes with 16 cents worth of strings attached. So what America does not understand is that it's a negative to take federal money, give it to 50 laboratories of innovation, the states to improve on, and that's what we'll see, dramatic improvement.
Senator Santorum.
Yeah, 20 years ago, the federal contribution to education was 3%. It's not 11%, and our schools are doing worse. And it's exactly what Gary Johnson just said. It's because the federal governments are meddling. The bottom line problem with education is that the education system doesn't serve the customer of the education system. And who's the customer? The parents. Because it's the parents' responsibility to educate the children. It's been that responsibility from the moment they were born. They began the education of their children. At some point, the government has convinced parents that at some point it's no longer their responsibility. In fact, they force them, in many respects, to turn their children over to the public education system and wrest control from them and block them out of the participation of that. That has to change, or education will not improve in this country.
Speaker Gingrich.
I think you need very profound reform in education at the state level. You need to dramatically shrink the Federal Department of Education, get rid of virtually all of its regulations. And the truth is, I believe we'd be far better off if most states adopted a program of the equivalent of Pell Grants for K through 12, so that parents could choose where their child went to school, whether it was public or private or homeschooling, and parents could be involved. Florida has a virtual school program that is worth the entire country studying, as an example.
Congressman Paul.
If you care about your children, you'll get the federal government out of the business of educating our kids. In 1980, when the Republican Party ran, part of the platform was to get rid of the Department of Education. By the year 2000, it was eliminated, and we fed on to it. Then we, as Republicans, added No Child Left Behind. So the first thing a president should do is the goal should be set to get the government out completely, but don't enforce this law of No Child Left Behind. It's not going to do any good, and nobody likes it. And there's no value to it. The teachers don't like it, and the students don't like it. But there are other things that the federal government can do, and that is give tax credits for the people who will opt out. We ought to have a right to opt out of the public system if you want.
Governor Perry.
There are a lot of good ideas here on the side, whether it's cutting back on the Department of Education, making those types of reductions. I happen to believe we ought to be promoting school choice all across this country. I think the voucher system, charter schools all across this country, but there's one person on this stage that is for Obama's race to the top, and that is Governor Romney. He said so just this last week, and I think that is an important difference between the rest of the people on this stage and one person that wants to run for the presidency, being in favor of the Obama race to the top, and that is not conservative.
Governor Romney.
Nice try. Let me tell you what I think I do. One, education has to be held at the local and state level, not at the federal level. We need to get the federal government out of education. And secondly, all the talk about we need smaller classroom size, look, that's promoted by the teachers' unions to hire more teachers. We looked at what drives good education in our state. What we found is the best thing for education is great teachers. Hire the very best and brightest to be teachers, pay them properly, make sure that you have school choice, test your kids to see if they're meeting the standards that need to be met, and make sure that you put the parents in charge. And as president, I'll stand up to the national teachers unions.
Governor Romney, I want to give you more time. Did Governor Perry say something that wasn't true?
I'm not sure exactly what he's saying. I don't support any particular program that he's describing. I think that the president, I think that the Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, is doing a good thing by saying, you know what? We should insist that teachers get evaluated and that schools have the opportunity to see which teachers are succeeding and which ones are failing, and that teachers that are not successful are removed from the classroom. Those ideas by Secretary Duncan, that's a lot better than what the president did, which is cutting off school choice in the Washington, D.C. schools. So let's give us a full chance to talk about them.
Congresswoman Bachmann.
We need to do in education what's always worked historically, and that's local control with parents. What doesn't work is what we see happen right now. I'm a mom of 5 biological kids. We've raised 23 foster children in our home. The reason why I got involved in politics was because of the concern I had about our foster children, the education they were getting. What I would do as President of the United States is pass a mother of all repeal bills on education. I would take the entire federal education law, repeal it, then I would go over to the Department of Education, I'd turn out the lights, I'd lock the door, and I'd send all the money back to the state and localities.
Mr. King.
A lot of good ideas. I won't repeat them. All of the programs at the federal level where there are strings attached, cut all the strings. We've got to encourage parents to take advantage of choices, but provide those choices, and we must find ways to empower the students. This is how we're going to improve education, but primarily get the federal government out of trying to educate our kids at the local level.
Governor Huntsman.
This is a key question because it has so much to do with our nation's competitiveness. I feel like I've run my own clinical trial in my home raising 7 kids. We've seen every option, we've experienced everything out there, but as governor I learned some important things. I signed the second voucher bill in the United States, Carson Smith. I've actually done something about this. We actually worked on early childhood literacy. If you can lock in the pillars of cognitive development around reading and math before age 6, you're giving those kids the best gift possible as they then proceed through education. Finally, you've got to say no to unfunded mandates coming out of Washington. They're totally unacceptable. No one loves their schools more than parents and local school boards and local elected officials. Localize, localize, localize.
Governor Huntsman, thank you. And by the way, everyone likes the new sound. It's far more pleasing instead of the bell. Okay, I guess they do. Chris Wallace with a round of questions on immigration.
Congresswoman Bachmann, as you well know, a number of states are trying to crack down on illegal immigration. We got a bunch of questions on immigration like this one from Tim Emerson. This is a text question, so you don't need to look up there. Tim Emerson of California. He wrote this. Would you support each state enforcing the immigration laws since the federal government is not? Congresswoman, could you answer Tim's question? And if your answer is yes, how do you square that with the Constitution, which says that Congress has the power to establish a uniform rule of naturalization?
Well, the reason why he's asking this question is because the federal government has failed the American people and have failed the states. It's reprehensible that President Obama has sued the state of Arizona and the governor of Arizona for trying to protect the people in Arizona. That's wrong. As President of the United States, I would do what my job would demand of me. That's to uphold the sovereignty of the United States of America. To do that, I would build a fence on America's southern border, on every mile, on every yard, on every foot, on every inch of the southern border. I think that's what we have to do. Not only build it, but then also have sufficient border security and enforce the laws that are on the books with the ICE agents, with our border security. And here's the other thing I would do. I would not allow taxpayer-funded benefits for illegal aliens or for their children. That's a magnet. End the magnets for illegal aliens to come into the United States of America.
Congresswoman, thank you, and we're going to get back to that issue in a moment. But first, Speaker Gingrich, as you well know, there's a debate going on in Congress right now about whether or not to make all employers, all businesses use E-Verify, a government database, to check whether or not new hires are legal. Now, some Tea Partiers object to that idea because they say it would turn small businessmen into immigration agents. But Kristen Williamson of the Federation for American Immigration Reform sent this question. Please look at it.
Kristen Williamson, the Federation for American Immigration Reform. Struggling U.S. workers continue to compete with millions of illegal aliens. Do you support legislation to require all employers to use E-Verify in order to ensure that the people that they hire are actually legally authorized to work in the U.S.? And will you impose penalties against employers who continue to hire illegal workers?
The question, Mr. Speaker, is should employers be required to use E-Verify?
Well, let me say, first of all, I think that we'd be far better off to outsource E-Verify to American Express, MasterCard, or Visa, because they actually know how to run a program like that without massive fraud. Second, the program should be as easy as swiping your credit card when you buy gasoline. And so I would ask of employers, what is it you would object to in helping the United States of America in dealing with a problem involving illegal immigration? But in addition, I want to reinforce what Congresswoman Bachmann said. I strongly favor 100% control of the border, and I strongly favor English as the official language of government. And I favor modernizing the legal visa system to make it far more convenient, far easier, and far more practical here in Orlando, where we have a huge interest in people being able to visit easily for tourism. We have a terribly antiquated legal system, while our border is too open for people who are illegal.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Governor Romney, I want to continue a conversation that you had with Governor Perry in the last debate. In Massachusetts, you vetoed legislation to provide in-state tuition rates to the children of the illegals. Governor Perry, of course, signed the Texas DREAM Act to do exactly that. But what about Governor Perry's argument that it's better to get these kids an education and to get them jobs than to consign them just to being a burden on the state?
It's an argument I just can't follow. I got to be honest with you. I don't see how it is that a state like Texas, to go to University of Texas, if you're an illegal alien, you get an in-state tuition discount. You know how much that is? It's $22,000 a year. 4 years of college, you're almost $100,000 discount if you're an illegal alien to go to the University of Texas. If you're a United States citizen from any one of the other 49 states, you have to pay $100,000 more. That doesn't make sense to me. And that kind of magnet, that kind of magnet draws people into this country to get that education, to get the $100,000 break. It makes no sense. We have to have, just as Speaker Gingrich said, and as Michelle Bachmann said as well, Congresswoman Bachmann, and that is we have to have a fence, we have to have enough Border Patrol agents to secure the fence, we have to have a system like E-Verify that employers can use to identify who's here legally and illegally. We have to crack down on employers that hire people that are here illegally, and we have to turn off the magnet of extraordinary government benefits like a $100,000 tax credit, or excuse me, discount for going to University of Texas. That shouldn't be allowed. It makes no sense at all.
Governor Perry, I'm going to ask you a question, so you don't need to respond to him because you're going to get a full minute to answer your question, which is on directly this point. You're the candidate whose name, by a wide margin, came up most often in the questions being submitted to all of you candidates about immigration. Dave Hollenbeck of Arizona sent this. Today, it appears that you have not tried to stop the illegals from coming. We have high unemployment and a considerable amount of jobs going to illegals. Are you going to exert an effort to stop the abuse of U.S. citizens by illegal? Now, last year, more than 16,000 children of illegals, young people in Texas, took advantage of your in-state tuition rate. Speak to that issue, and just generally, how do you feel being criticized by a number of these other candidates on the stage for being too soft on immigration, sir?
Well, I feel pretty normal getting criticized by these folks, but the fact of the matter is this. There is nobody on this stage who has spent more time working on border security than I have. For a decade, I've been the governor of a state with a 1,200-mile border with Mexico. We put $400 million of our taxpayer money into securing that border. We've got our Texas Ranger recon teams there now. I supported Arizona's immigration law by joining in that lawsuit to defend it. Every day I have Texans on that border that are doing their job. But if you say that we should not educate children who have come into our state for no other reason than they've been brought there by no fault of their own, I don't think you have a heart. We need to be educating these children because they will become a drag on our society. I think that's what Texans wanted to do. Out of 181 members of the Texas legislature, when this issue came up, only 4 dissenting votes. This was a state issue. Texans voted on it, and I still support it greatly.
Senator Santorum. Wait. Senator Santorum, you don't need to butt in because I'm about to ask you a question, sir. Okay? On this exact issue. You say that Governor Perry's opposition to building a border along the entire fence shows that he is, quote, a big government moderate. Question. Is he soft on illegal immigration?
Governor Perry, no one's suggesting up here that the students that are illegal in this country shouldn't be able to go to a college and university. I mean, I think you're sort of making this leap that unless we subsidize this, the taxpayers subsidize it, they won't be able to go. Well, most folks who want to go to the state of Texas or any other state, out of state, have to pay the full boat. The point is, why are we subsidized? Not that they can't go, they can go. They just have to borrow money, find other sources to be able to go. And why should they be given preferential treatment as an illegal in this country? That's what we're saying. And so, yes, I would say that he is soft on illegal immigration. I think the fact that he doesn't want to build a fence. He gave a speech in 2001 where he talked about binational health insurance between Mexico and Texas. I mean, I don't even think Barack Obama would be for binational health insurance. So I think he's very weak on this issue of American sovereignty and protecting our borders and not being a magnet for illegal immigration. Yes.
Governor Perry, 30 seconds to respond.
I got one question for him. Have you ever even been to the border with Mexico? Yes. I'm surprised if you have, but you weren't paying attention because the idea
the answer is yes,
that you are going to build a wall, a fence for 1,200 miles and then go 800 miles more to Tijuana does not make sense. You put the boots on the ground. We know how to make this work. You put the boots on the ground.
But it's not working,
you put the
Governor.
aviation assets in the ground. No,
But
it's not working because the federal government
You
is
say
not.
we know how it works. Is it working in
The federal
Texas?
government has not engaged in this at all. When I'm the president of the United
But you're
States, I'll
saying you put
promise
the
you one
assets
thing.
there. Has it worked in Texas?
We will put the assets on the ground,
You
the
said you
boots on
had.
the ground,
Senator
the
John, let him
aviation
finish, please.
assets on the ground, and we will stop illegal immigration. We will stop the drug cartels, and we will make America secure.
Can you answer the question? Is it
Well,
working?
you know, you asked your question. He gave his answer, sir.
Okay.
Sometimes we're frustrated with all of you answering questions. Congressman Paul, I want to ask you a question about a comment you made a couple of weeks ago about a border fence with Mexico. Here's what you said, sir. I want to quote it. There's capital controls and there's people control. So every time you think of a fence keeping all those bad people out, think about those fences maybe being used against us, keeping us in. Question, Congressman. Do you know a lot of Americans who want to take their money and flee the United States of America?
There are some. All the candidates up here talk about repatriation of dollars. They've already taken them overseas. We're talking about trying to bring in $1.5 trillion because they leave our country because we make it uncomfortable. Too many regulations, too much taxation. They can't start business. They've lost confidence. Yes, when countries destroy a currency, they do lead to capital controls and they lead to people control. So I think it is a real concern. And also, once you have these data banks, the data banks means that everybody's going to be in the data bank. You say, oh no, the data bank's there for the illegals. But everybody's in the data bank. That's national ID card. If you care about your personal liberty, you'll be cautious when you feel comfortable. Blame all the illegal immigrants for everything. What you need to do is attack their benefits. No free education, no free subsidies, no citizenship, no birthright citizenship. And that would get to the bottom of it a lot sooner. But economically, you should not ignore the fact that in tough economic times, money and people want to leave the country. That's unfortunate.
Congressman Paul, thank you very much, sir.
Chris, thank you. Let's check in now with Shannon Bream. Shannon.
Well, Brett, one of the really interesting and valuable pieces of information we get from our partner Google is looking at search trends. We want to take you through some of those. They've looked online for people within the U.S. who have been searching for coupons. We've talked about the economy a lot. If you look at the trend, it has been going up very steadily since 2004 to right now. Another search compares home loan searches for foreclosure searches. Those have flipped over time, and now more people searching for information about foreclosures than home loans. And another look, this compares folks searching for the best SUV miles per gallon and also gas prices, and those go together. When people are worried about their pocketbooks, worried about finding a bargain, they're also looking at how they can save on gas and how they can conserve. We've also been tracking questions that you've been putting to the candidates. We've put them to the folks at home as well, and we've got some results. This question, the same one we asked the candidates. If you had to cut a government department, what would you cut? This is what the folks at home told us. The Labor Department, 8%. The EPA, 12%. Housing and urban development, 12%. Education, 47%. Easily the majority there. And none, 20%. Check it all out, youtube.com/Fox News. Brett, back to you.
Thanks, Shannon. We'll check back with you a little later. Up next, foreign policy, social issues, and health care after the break.
All right, thanks for joining us on the commercial breaks here at youtube.com/Fox News. I've got Steve Grove with us again, the head of news and politics for Google and YouTube, and also Chris Steyerwalt, the Fox News digital politics editor and host of Power Play Live, 11:30 Eastern every weekday.
Heck yeah.
All right, so let's talk about some of the search trends. One of the ones we just talked about. Break it out for us a little bit, Steve.
Well, the one you just showed, let's see if we can get on the monitor back here, it compares home loans versus foreclosures. Over time, Less people searching for home loans, more people searching for foreclosure. Gives you sort of a sense of the pulse of what people are looking for as the economy has gotten worse over time.
All right, any surprise there? We know that housing is a big problem, Chris.
No, ma'am, and that's the whole problem for President Obama. If your house isn't worth what it is, even if you're not moving, even if it doesn't affect the amount of money that you have in your pocket that day, it makes you feel poor, it makes you feel less prosperous, it makes you feel like the country's going the wrong direction.
Yeah, it certainly affects the mood, and when you look at that, that's reflected in job performance, and the numbers haven't been good on that account, and you know when people are worried about their house and their job, that's naturally going to be the result. All right, and speaking of jobs, you've tracked some data on that as well, Steve.
We have. We decided, look, who's searching to get jobs at McDonald's over time? This is a minimum wage job. A lot of people are losing their jobs. Who's looking for a job at McDonald's since 2004? Numbers going up and up. More and more people looking to find a job at McDonald's and a lot of other places like it. So
significant trend there. I mean, significant numbers weighing in on this specific search.
Yeah, pocketbook issue. You know, folks looking for work, go to Google, look for a job on the site, and it just goes up and up over time.
And this is a company, Chris, that, you know, all smirking aside, they've been hiring.
No, they've been hiring and they've been succeeding in a down economy. Now, I attribute a lot of it to the McRib, which is very delicious. Come on, Shannon.
They have many delectable delights. That would not be my number one. Is it your number one?
Full-time McRib is what's needed to get this country back on
Seasonal.
track. No. But what you see, basically, that McDonald's, look, there are companies that can succeed in these downtimes, and there are candidates that can succeed in downtimes, and you're seeing on the Republican stage who can be that turnaround artist.
All right, something else that you've introduced us tonight is this idea of word clouds.
Yeah.
Tell us about the latest one you've got and how it works.
So we looked at the social issues category, all the people that submitted questions on social issues. We looked at all those words. What were the words they used the most when they're asking questions in this category? This word diagram shows that the larger the word, the more often that word was used when people were asking social issues questions.
All right, so Chris, what pops out to you?
Marriage and marijuana.
The two M's.
The two M's. Double M, you see them right there in the middle. It's the dichotomy of the Republican Party. It becomes more libertarian with each successive cycle. You see Ron Paul is wrecking shop, man. He is down there. The place is going wild for him. I mean, he has answers that even just 4 years ago that he was getting lit up for by Rudy Giuliani and other people. This time it's like, heck yeah. I mean, when he can answer a question about currency controls and get cheers in the crowd, you know that the Republican Party is getting more libertarian. But the core of the Republican Party is still very socially conservative, so gay marriage is an important issue. So the division inside the Republican Party isn't fiscal as much as it is on the social side. As it gets more libertarian one way, but another way it stays true to its roots.
You know, and a lot of critics will look at this and say, hey, you have this whole 10th Amendment argument that you want to let the states do what they want to do, if they want to make decisions about legalizing drugs and about gay marriage and all these other kinds of things. But there are several of these candidates who take a federal position, something they would want to be national, on things like DOMA, defense of marriage, and others. All right, we will keep breaking down this information. Steve, Chris, great to have you along for the ride. Every commercial break, we'll look at more and more and see what folks at home are having to say. In the meantime, we're going to take it back into the convention center where Brett, Megan, and Chris are getting ready to give another round of questions to the candidates there. They're prepping, they're ready to go.
Welcome back to Orlando and the Republican presidential debate. We're partnering, easy for me to say, with Google and the Florida Republican Party. Now to the topic of foreign policy. And all night we've been showing you these word clouds. Take a look at this one. All the searches on foreign policy, Israel is the biggest word. These are actually the words used in questions. And that brings us to our first question. This week, with the Palestinian efforts at the United Nations, the issue of the future of Israel is a big concern to questioners. In fact, Governor Romney, the next question was a top question voted in the foreign policy section from Yigal Marcus in Teaneck, New Jersey.
As president, how would you approach the new reality in the Middle East, specifically with regards to our ally Israel and the existential threats it faces from Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, and now the Palestinian Authority?
Governor Romney.
Very simply, you start off by saying that you don't allow an inch of space to exist between you and your friends and your allies. The president went about this all wrong. He went around the world and apologized for America. He addressed the United Nations in his inaugural address and chastised our friend Israel for building settlements and said nothing about Hamas launching thousands of rockets into Israel. Just before Bibi Netanyahu came to the United States, he threw Israel under the bus, trying to negotiate for Israel. The right course, if you disagree with an ally, you talk about it privately, but in public you stand shoulder to shoulder with your allies. The right course for us is not to try and negotiate for Israel. The right course is to stand behind our friends, to listen to them, and to let the entire world know that we will stay with them and that we will support them and defend them. And with regards to Iran, which perhaps represents the greatest existential threat to Israel, we have to make it abundantly clear. It is unacceptable, and I take that word carefully, it is unacceptable for Iran to become a nuclear nation.
Thank you, Governor Romney. Mr. Kaine, this week the Palestinian Authority brought their bid for statehood to the United Nations. How would you respond to the unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state?
It starts with an extension of the Reagan philosophy of peace through strength. My philosophy would extend that to peace through strength and clarity. This administration has not made it clear how it stands with Israel. When I was in Israel last month, I met with the Deputy Prime Minister, and he made it shockingly, chillingly clear that given everything that's going on, number one, Israel will defend itself with all of the tensions going on in the Middle East. And he also made it real clear that he wasn't sure how this administration stood when it came to Israel. I made it clear, which I would also make it clear to all of the other people in the world, that if you mess with Israel, you're messing with the United States of America. We will stand solidly behind Israel. If in fact it was clear to the Palestinians where the United States stood, they might have had second thoughts about trying to pull such a move without negotiating with Israel.
Mr. Kaine, thank you. Here's a comparison of searches on Google for Israel, Pakistan, and Afghanistan over the past few years. You can see the lines here. Israel dominates the searches, except for a few critical moments in time for Pakistan, which brings us to this. Governor Perry, if you were president and you got a call at 3 a.m. telling you that Pakistan had lost control of its nuclear weapons at the hands of the Taliban, what would be your first move?
Well, obviously, before you ever get to that point, you have to build a relationship in that region. And that's one of the things that this administration has not done. Yesterday, we found out through Admiral Mullen that Haqqani has been involved with, and that's the a terrorist group directly associated with the Pakistani country. So to have a relationship with India, to make sure that India knows that they are an ally of the United States. For instance, when we had the opportunity to sell India the upgraded F-16s, we chose not to do that. We did the same thing with Taiwan. The point is, our allies need to understand clearly that we are their friends. We will be standing by there with them. Today, we don't have those allies in that region that can assist us if that situation that you talked about were to become a reality.
Senator Santorum, if the security situation were to fall apart in Iraq in 2012, would you support sending U.S. troops back to the region to stabilize the gains made?
I'm not for taking them out of the region. I believe that we need to listen to our generals, and our generals are very, very clear that we need to continue to stabilize the Iraqi government wants and needs our intelligence in particular, needs force protection. We need to have anywhere, I'm hearing numbers of 20, 30,000 troops potentially to remain in Iraq, not indefinitely, but to continue to make sure that this is a stable transition. This is the difference between Congressman Paul, Governor Huntsman, Governor Perry, and myself when it comes to this issue. I stand up and say that when we engage in Iraq and Afghanistan, we engage because we want to be successful. We want victory. We want to have accomplished a national security objective for this country, to make sure that we are safer. We're not on a political agenda to withdraw troops. So the first thing is to make sure that we secure success. To answer the question on Pakistan, which I'm not too sure was answered, the bottom line is that we should be establishing relationships in Pakistan with allies of ours, folks like relationships with President Musharraf, who we had in the past, with others in that country. So if in fact something like that would occur, we could work in concert to make sure that coup could be overturned and make sure that those nuclear weapons do not fall into those hands. But working with allies at that point is the last thing we want to do. We want to work in that country to make sure that the problem is diffused.
Speaker Gingrich, many of the foreign policy questions we received had directly to do with the U.S. economy as well when it came to the topic of foreign aid. Butch Russell had the top voted video question in the section of foreign policy.
When are we going to get someone in the White House that can stand up to these other countries and say, you're not getting any more of our money? This is stupid. We send billions of dollars overseas to countries that hate us.
Speaker Gingrich.
I actually think there's a lot to that, and I've been a strong supporter of international assistance, but I think there are a couple of good reasons to review the whole program. First of all, I'd replace virtually all government-to-government aid with some kind of investment approach that encouraged American companies to create jobs that made both the United States and the other country wealthier. Our bureaucrats giving their bureaucrats money is a guaranteed step towards corruption. Second, I think when you have countries that vote against you in the United Nations consistently, you really have to ask yourself, why are you giving them anything? I mean, if they're not your ally, why are, you have a... We came out of World War II with the generosity that made perfect sense when we had 50% of the world economy. And it was a different world. And we need to understand how different it is. But I want to go back to your question on Pakistan, because I think people need to understand how real this is. This world is in danger of becoming dramatically more dangerous in the not-too-distant future. People talk about an Iranian weapon. There may be well over 100 nuclear weapons in Pakistan, and the example you used is not too far-fetched to worry about.
Speaker Gingrich, thank you. Governor Johnson, here in Florida, charter flights from Fort Lauderdale to Havana, Cuba have resumed. Is there a problem with that? And what are your thoughts on U.S.-Cuba policy?
I think the biggest threat to our national security is the fact that we're bankrupt. So I am promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013, and included in that is a 43% reduction in military spending. I think it's crazy that we have foreign aid to countries when we're borrowing 43 cents out of every dollar to do that. Military alliances are really key to other countries taking up the slack. With regard to flights to Cuba, I'm in favor, I think, of the whole notion that trade promotes friendship as opposed to not. So I would be inclined to looking at establishing or supporting those kinds of flights.
Brett?
Governor Johnson, thank you.
Excuse me, Brett. Could I weigh in on this?
Congresswoman Bachmann.
I'd like to weigh in on this because according to the State Department's website, there are 4 nations that are state sponsors of terror. Cuba is one of those nations. We would never have flights between the United States and Cuba. It's a state sponsor of terror.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Now to my colleague, Megyn Kelly, on the topic of social issues.
Governor Huntsman.
Just one issue. I just want to respond to my friend Rick Santorum here. Is the microphone working?
It is.
Thank you. We do have a difference of opinion here in terms of overall foreign policy. And I think, as the only one on stage with any hands-on foreign policy experience, having lived overseas 4 different times, we're at a critical juncture in our country. We don't have a foreign policy, and we don't project the goodness of this country in terms of liberty, democracy, open markets, and human rights with the weak core. And right now in this country, our core, our economy is broken. And we don't shine that light today. We're 25% of the world's GDP. The world is a better place when the United States is strong. So guiding anything that we talk about from a foreign policy standpoint needs to be fixing our core. But second of all, I believe that after 10 years of fighting the war on terror, people are ready to bring our troops home from Afghanistan, Rick. They're ready to bring our troops home. This country has given its all.
Governor Huntsman.
What remains behind, some element to collect intelligence, special forces capability, and we're going to have to do that in every corner of the world. But we need to fix this core and get serious about what the rest of the 21st century holds for this country.
Senator Santorum, very quickly.
Just because our economy is sick does not mean our country is sick, and doesn't mean our values are sick. And we're going to stand up for those values every opportunity to do so to make sure that our country is safe. The bottom line is that you just mentioned is we should be fighting wars to win, not fighting wars for politics. And this president is fighting a war in Afghanistan with one hand tied behind our generals, not giving the troops they need, not giving the authority, the rules of engagement to allow us to be successful. And unless we change those rules of engagement and make sure that our folks can win, then we are going to play politics with our military.
This may not come as a huge revelation. We've been talking about Pakistan here, but at the end of the day, folks, only Pakistan can save Pakistan. Only Afghanistan can save Afghanistan. Yeah. All that I want right now at this point in history is for America to save America. We've got to fix our core and get it right.
Thank you very much. Now, as I originally said, Megyn Kelly on social issues.
And now I'm moving on from you, Governor Huntsman, to you, Congresswoman Bachmann. In 2006, you said that public schools are, quote, teaching children that there is separation of church and state, and said, quote, I am here to tell you that's a myth. Do you believe that there is a limit on government's ability to inject religion into the public square? And if so, what is that limit?
Well, I think that Thomas Jefferson stated it best. He was the author of the religious liberty that he valued so much, and that's that the United States government should not be a state church. That's really what the fundamental was of separation of church and state. And when Jefferson wrote a letter to the Danbury Baptists wanted to know, will you have a national church in the United States? He said no, because we believe in freedom of conscience. We believe in freedom of religious liberty and expression and speech. That's a foundational principle in the United States. But that doesn't mean that we aren't people of faith, and that people of faith shouldn't be allowed to exercise religious liberty in the public square. Of course we should be able to exercise our faith. And whether that expression occurs in a public school or occurs in a public building, we should be able to allow to have freedom for all people to express our belief in God.
Senator Santorum, this question stirred up a whole lot of controversy online. It comes from Stephen Hill, who is a soldier serving in Iraq.
In 2010, when I was deployed to Iraq, I had to lie about who I was because I'm a gay soldier, and I didn't want to lose my job. My question is, under one of your presidencies, do you intend to circumvent the progress that's been made for gay and lesbian soldiers in the military?
Yeah, I would say any type of sexual activity has absolutely no place in the military, and the fact that they're making a point to include it as a provision within the military that we are going to recognize a group of people and give them a special privilege in DONA and removing DONA as don't tell, I think tries to inject social policy into the military, and the military's job is to do one thing, and that is to defend our country. We need to give the military, which is all volunteer, the ability to do so in a way that is most efficient in protecting our men and women in uniform, and I believe this undermines that ability.
So what would you do with soldiers like Stephen Hill? I mean, he's out. You saw his face on camera. When he first submitted this video to us, it was without his face on camera. Now he's out. So what would you do as president?
I think look, what we're doing is playing social experimentation with our military right now, and that's tragic. I would just say that going forward, we would reinstitute that policy if Rick Santorum was president, period. That policy would be reinstituted, and as far as people who are in it, I would not throw them out, because that would be unfair to them because of the policy of this administration, but we would move forward in conformity with what was happening in the past, which was sex is not an issue. It should not be an issue. Leave it alone. Keep it to yourself, whether you're heterosexual or homosexual.
Congressman Paul, you have said that you believe that life begins at conception and that abortion ends an innocent life. If you believe that, how can you support a rape exception to abortion bans? And how can you support the morning after pill? Aren't those lives just as innocent?
They may be, but the way this is taken care of in our country, it is not a national issue. This is a state issue. And there are circumstances There are circumstances where doctors in the past have used certain day after pills for somebody with rape. And quite frankly, if somebody is treated, you don't even know if a person is pregnant. You don't even know if there's a disease. But if it's 24 hours after rape, I don't know how you're going to police it. So I don't think you should create. We have too many laws already. Now, how are you going to police the day after pill? It doesn't make any sense to me in a practical matter. So I would say that nobody can outdo me on respect for life. I've spent a lifetime dealing with life, but I still think there is a time where the law doesn't solve the problems. Only the moral character of the people will eventually solve this problem, not the law.
Governor Perry, you and our former president, George W. Bush, have a lot in common. You're both Republicans from Texas. You both ran on the same ticket for the State House. You both share a deep religious faith. Now, you've made a point of saying, well, we went to different colleges, Texas A&M and Yale, and point out that you have a different approach from President Bush when it comes to government spending. But what are the other differences that you can cite between you and President Bush, and what say you about these reports that there is some bad blood between the two of you?
Well, let me address the last issue first, and we got a great rapport. I talk to the president from time to time, call him on his birthday, wish him happy birthday, talk to him on a relatively regular basis. I highly respect the president and his public service. What we have in difference is probably as much as in style as in substance on various issues. For instance, I was very vocal in my disagreement with him on Medicaid Part D, that the federal government should be involved in that very expensive program. And I was also vocal against No Child Left Behind. It gets back to the federal government has no business telling the states how to educate our children.
Thank you, Megan. We've been showing you these word clouds throughout the night. Take a look at this one. All of the questions on health care. You can see the big word there, Obamacare. Chris has the questions on health care.
And we'll get right to that question of Obamacare. Mr. Kaine, you are a survivor of stage 4 colon and liver cancer. And you say if Obamacare had been and we all share in the happiness about your situation, but you say if Obamacare had been in effect when you were first being treated, you'd be dead now. Why?
The reason I said that I would be dead on Obamacare is because my cancer was detected in March of 2006. And from March of 2006 all the way to the end of 2006, for that number of months, I was able to get the necessary CAT scan, tests, go to the necessary doctors, get a second opinion, get chemotherapy, go to get surgery, recuperate from surgery, get more chemotherapy in a span of 9 months. If we had been on the Obamacare and a bureaucrat was trying to tell me when I could get that CAT scan, that would have delayed my treatment. My surgeons and doctors have told me that because I was able to get the treatment as fast as I could based upon my timetable and not the government's timetable, that's what saved my life, because I only had a 30% chance of survival. And now I'm here 5 years cancer-free because I could do it on my timetable and not on a bureaucrat's timetable. This is one of the reasons I believe a lot of people are objecting to Obamacare, because we need to get bureaucrats out of the business of trying to micromanage health care in this nation.
Governor Huntsman, you say that President Obama's health care plan is a $1 trillion bomb dropped on taxpayers and job creation. But I want to show you the top voted question on YouTube that was submitted on health care, and it comes from Ian McDonald of Michigan, who says he has a health problem. Watch it, sir.
Hi, I'm a student and I have a chronic heart condition. So for me, and those like me, the Democrats' health care reform allowing us to stay on our parents' insurance longer was a godsend. If you were elected, would you work, as is the stated position of your party, to repeal this reform? And if so, are we supposed to just sign up for 12 credit hours and pray really hard that our ailments don't prevent us from going to class?
Governor, what about provisions that Ian talks about? For instance, the one that allows kids to stay on their parents' policies until they're 26, or not limiting coverage for pre-existing conditions. President Obama says the only way that insurance companies can afford to provide those kinds of reforms is with the individual mandate, where they get a lot of new customers.
When I hear this discussion, I think of my daughter Elizabeth, who's sitting on the front row, who suffers from juvenile diabetes. And I also am reminded that we're fundamentally approaching health care reform the wrong way. This $1 trillion bomb that Obamacare means to this country over 10 years is creating such uncertainty in the marketplace that businesses aren't willing to hire, they're not willing to deploy capital into the marketplace. It has gummed up our system. So you say, what do? I say we go out to the states and let the states experiment and find breakthroughs in how we address healthcare reform. Healthcare reform, it's a $3 trillion industry. It's the size of the GDP of France. It's large, it's complicated. All I want to do is do the kind of thing we did in the state of Utah in direct response. We need affordable insurance policies. We don't have affordable insurance policy today. We got one in the state of Utah, a stripped-down, bare-bones, catastrophic coverage policy that young people could finally afford. And then you can start whittling down the high percentage of the people who are uninsured in this country because they have an affordable policy. That's number one. Number two, we have to deal with cost containment measures like harmonizing medical records. We were the first state to do that. So let's forget about federal fixes and solutions and turn to the states where we're going to find real breakthroughs and real answers to this terribly difficult and complicated problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Congresswoman Bachmann, in the last debate, you criticized Governor Perry for his executive order mandating that sixth graders get the HPV vaccine to prevent cervical cancer. Then afterwards, you suggested that the vaccine was linked to mental retardation, and you said that it could, quote, potentially be a very dangerous drug. But the American Academy of Pediatrics has looked at it and says that the HPV vaccine has an excellent safety record. So my question to you is, do you stand by your statement that the HPV vaccine is potentially dangerous? And if not, should you be more careful when you're talking about a public health issue?
Well, first, I didn't make that claim, nor did I make that statement. Immediately after the debate, a mother came up to me, and she was visibly shaken and heartbroken because of what her daughter had gone through. And so I only related what her story was. But here's the real issue. Governor Perry mandated a health care decision on all 12-year-old little girls in the state of Texas. And by that mandate, those girls had to have a shot for a sexually transmitted disease. That is not appropriate to be a decision that a governor makes. It's appropriate that parents make that decision in consultation with their doctor. But here's the even more important point, because Governor Perry made a decision where he gave parental rights to a big drug company. That big drug company gave him campaign contributions and hired his former chief of staff to lobby him to benefit the big drug company. That's what was wrong with that picture.
Governor Perry, obviously 30 seconds to respond, sir.
Thank you. I got lobbied on this issue. I got lobbied by a 31-year-old young lady who had stage 4 cervical cancer. I spent a lot of time with her. She came by my office. She talked to me about this program. I readily admitted that we should have had an opt-in in this program, but I don't know what part of opt-out most parents don't get. And the fact is, I erred on the side of life, and I will always err on the side of life as a governor and as the President of the United States.
Governor Perry, I now have a question for you. Texas has the most uninsured residents of any state in the country, 25%. In the last debate, you blamed it on restrictions imposed by the federal government, but we checked about that, sir. In fact, the feds treat Texas like they do all the other big states. On its own, On its own, Texas has imposed some of the toughest eligibility rules for Medicaid of any state in the country. In fact, you rank 49th in Medicaid coverage of low-income residents. So the question is, isn't Texas's uninsured problem because of decisions made by Texas?
Well, I disagree with your analysis there, because we've had a request in for the federal government so that we could have a Medicaid waiver for years. And the federal government has stopped us from having that Medicaid waiver, allowing the state of Texas, or for that matter, the other states that we're making reference to here, to have waivers, give them more options to be able to give the options. There's a menu of options that we could have, just like John Huntsman talked about. That is how we go forward with our health care. Each state deciding how they're going to deliver that health care. Not one size fits all. And I think this whole concept of not allowing the states to come up with the best ideas about how to deliver health care in their state. And the fact is, people continue to move to the state of Texas, some of the highest rates in the country, because we have created a state where opportunity is very much the word of the day there, if you will, for finding work and what have you. And our health care is part of that, our education is part of that, and we're proud of what we put together in the state of Texas.
Governor Romney, the other day, Governor Perry called Romney Care socialized medicine. He said it has failed in Western Europe and in Massachusetts, and he warns that Republicans should not nominate, his words, Obama light. How do you respond to Governor Perry?
I don't think he knows what he's talking about in that regard. Let me tell you this about our system in Massachusetts. 92% of our people were insured before we put our plan in place. Nothing's changed for them. The system is the same. They have private market-based insurance. We had 8% of our people that weren't insured. And so what we did is we said, let's find a way to get them insurance. Again, market-based, private insurance. We didn't come up with some new government insurance plan. Our plan in Massachusetts has some good parts, some bad parts, some things I'd change, some things I like about it. It's different than Obamacare. And what you heard from Herman Cain is one absolutely key point, which is Obamacare intends to put someone between you and your physician. It must be repealed. And if I'm President of the United States, on my first day in office, I will issue an executive order which directs the Secretary of Health and Human Services to provide a waiver from Obamacare to all 50 states. That law is bad. It's unconstitutional. It shall not stand.
Governor Perry, 30 seconds to respond.
I think Americans just don't know sometimes which Mitt Romney they're dealing with. Is it the Mitt Romney that was on the side of against the Second Amendment before he was for the Second Amendment? Was before he was before these social programs from the standpoint of he was for standing up for Roe versus Wade before he was against Roe versus Wade? He was for race to the top. He's for Obamacare, and now he's against it. I mean, we'll wait until tomorrow and see which Mitt Romney we're really talking to tonight.
Governor Romney?
I'll use the same term again. Nice try. Governor, I wrote a book 2 years ago, and I laid out in that book what my views are on a wide range of issues. I'm a conservative businessman. I haven't spent my life in politics. I spent my life in business. I know how jobs come, how jobs go. My positions are laid out in that book. I stand by them. Governor Perry, you wrote a book 6 months ago. You're already retreating from the positions that were in that book.
Not an inch, sir.
Yeah, well, in that book, it says that Social Security was forced upon the American people. It says that by any measure, Social Security is a failure, not to 75 million people. And you also said that Social Security should be returned to the states. Now, those are the positions in your book, and simply, in my view, I'm going to stand by my positions. I'm proud of them. There are a lot of reasons not to elect me. A lot of reasons not to elect other people on the stage. But one reason to elect me is that I know what I stand for. I've written it down. Words have meaning, and I have the experience to get this country going again.
Gentlemen, thank you both. Brett?
Coming up, we return to issue number 1, jobs. Stay tuned.
right, thanks for sticking with us on youtube.com/Fox News, where we are breaking down a lot of raw data with the help of Steve Grove with Google and YouTube, and also our very own Chris Stirewalt. One thing that has changed a lot in recent years with campaigns is that instead of going out and making huge expensive ad buys, a lot of candidates are putting their ads or putting their videos online, and you've got some data on those.
Yeah, all of these candidates have YouTube channels. They upload videos almost every day. The first chart we want to show you is the number of videos that people have uploaded by candidate. And if you look at this, the candidate uploading the most videos is Mitt Romney. Number 2 is Newt Gingrich.
Yeah, very close.
And 3rd is Herman Cain. This is since they've announced their campaign. So most active in terms of videos is Mr. Romney.
Okay, but and to add to that, also, how many people are actually going and viewing them? Who's getting the most views?
Yeah, so let's take a look at that. In terms of who's the most popular in terms of video views in their videos, Ron Paul takes the cake. Since he's announced 1.6 million views of his videos on YouTube. Herman Cain, number 2, Romney coming close in at number 3. So, of course, again, as Chris said before, Ron Paul, big audience online, lots of video views on YouTube.
Does this pay off, Chris, for candidates? I mean, because, Steve says they're uploading to YouTube every single day. They're tracking it. They know. It's a daily occurrence, but is it worth the time and effort for them?
Sure, and you see sort of the difference between a grassroots system or somebody that has a big campaign. But everybody goes to YouTube. Everybody does it now, Governor Perry has got that web video out now that looks like...
He does. Actually, we have a picture of that.
It looks like the part of it that's most entertaining is the part at the beginning that is like the opening sequence to a horror movie that lays out Barack Obama.
It's like a movie trailer.
Right,
really.
it's kaboom. It's got a big kablooey in it. These people put huge investments. I mean, they put as much production value into these as they used to do or still do on broadcast and cable TV commercials. So, yeah, it's an avenue for people to talk directly to people. The other thing I'd point out is Herman Cain, who is having a great night down there. He is having a fantastic night. He had a big YouTube hit with his video that was basically, it was very grassrootsy, just him like walking around, talking to folks, and I think they had a song and stuff.
There was a song.
Yeah,
there was a song. It was very catchy.
Cool, and it just shows you that this is a citizen democracy is coming back a little bit, and it's kind of refreshing, isn't it?
Yeah, and you all both mentioned this video. Just how popular is it right now, Steve?
Well, this is the most popular YouTube video in the past day amongst all the candidates. Rick Perry's, you can see here, a video called Proven Leadership, 355,000 views in the past 2 days. So right now on YouTube, Perry's the candidate that's really rising.
All right, now he's also the person who's taken a lot of heat tonight on his positions as relates to immigration. You've got some data that you've been tracking on that.
We do, yeah. We have a poll. We asked folks out there watching on youtube.com/Fox News, what is the best way to fix immigration in the U.S.? And the first option was create a path to citizenship. 35% of you said that was the best way. Second was increase border patrol. 20% weighed in there. Deport all immigrants was the next category. We had 22% weighing in on that. Build a stronger fence, 19%, and then leave them alone, 5%. So the top way to fix immigration in the U.S., according to folks online, is to create a path to citizenship.
All right, Chris.
Rick Perry's got to like that news because basically he doubled down tonight on his position that says be tough on the border. He always says send out the Ranger teams, Ranger strike teams.
I felt like Chuck Norris was going to show up at any moment when he was talking about it.
But with this is a rather moderate position for what you would expect would be a largely Republican viewership.
Yeah. All right.
It's good news for
Sorry,
Perry.
gentlemen, we got to wrap it up. It's time to head back to the debates.
Welcome back to the Orange County Convention Center here in Orlando, Florida, and the Republican presidential debate. Now a question for all of the candidates. Independent New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg recently fretted over the possibility of the unemployed rioting in the streets. Ohio's Republican Governor John Kasich recently said, quote, "For the first time in my life, I'm worried about this country." And recently a liberal columnist wrote this, quote, "We've lost our mojo." You know, President Obama promised hope and change, and according to many polls, fewer and fewer Americans believe he's delivered. Now, I'm not asking for your jobs plan here. What I'm asking for is how are you going to turn this country around? We'll go down the row, 30 seconds each. Governor Huntsman.
First of all, let me say that this is a human tragedy playing out
with 15 million unemployed, so many million beyond who are so dispirited they've absolutely given up. Sheriff Hardy, who's a great sheriff in Hillsborough County, New Hampshire, talks about foreclosures that his folks are now handing out, first time ever to the middle class. I would drop 3 things on the doorstep of Congress to change and turn the situation around. 1, my tax reform package, endorsed by the Wall Street Journal. 2, serious regulatory reform, Dodd-Frank, Obamacare, repealed. 3, energy independence. Boone Pickens had some great ideas in terms of converting to natural gas. It's a 500,000 job creator over 5 years. It would get the engines of growth going like nothing else I can think of.
Mr. King.
Obviously, it starts with economic growth. And yes, I've already laid out how I would do that with my 999 plan. But what Americans are looking for in order to build their confidence is leadership. There is a severe deficiency of leadership in Washington, D.C., and once we fill that void, I believe American people will begin to develop some confidence again in terms of believing in this nation. Ronald Reagan was the one who said that we are a shining city on a hill. We've slid down the side of that hill. Americans want somebody who's going to lead them back up to the top of that hill. That's how we turn this country around.
Congresswoman Bachmann.
I agree. It's time to reach for the brass ring of liberty once again, and we can. The signature issue of Barack Obama and his presidency has been the passage of Obamacare. This week, a study came out from UBS that said the #1 reason why employers aren't hiring is because of Obamacare. That's why I introduced the bill to repeal Obamacare, and as President of the United States, that's the very first thing I would do is repeal Obamacare.
Governor Romney.
All across America, you've got families sitting across from sitting in their living rooms and their kitchens, sitting at the kitchen table with a calculator and a checkbook, seeing if they have enough money to make ends meet for the month or the week. You got people who are sitting at that same table filling out job application forms, knowing that there are hundreds of other people that are doing the same thing for the same job. These are tough times for a lot of people in this country, but we are a patriotic people. We place our hand over our heart during the playing of the national anthem. No other people on earth do that. And if we're led by a leader who draws on that patriotism, who tells the truth, who lives with integrity, and who knows how to lead, America will remain the hope of the earth and the strongest nation in the world. I'll do it.
Governor Perry.
Americans want a leader who's got a proven record of job creation. #1, we get rid of Obamacare. Secondly, we pull back all of those regulations that are job killing today, whether it's Dodd-Frank or whether it's the EPA. And then we sit with the Congress and we lower those corporate tax rates, we lower those personal tax rates, and then we put our plan to make America energy independent, and that is the way you get America working again.
Congressman Paul.
Government destroys jobs, the market creates jobs. So the government isn't going to be expected to create the jobs. They have to change the environment. But you can't do that unless you understand where the depression, recessions come from. And you can't understand that unless you know where the bubbles come from. I've been arguing this case for 20 years and warning about bubbles and housing bubbles and NASDAQ bubbles, and a lot of other economists have been doing the same thing. Until we understand that, you can't solve the problem. You have to deal with the Federal Reserve System. You have to deal with free markets, and you have to deal with the tax program and the regulatory system. Then you can get your jobs, because the people will create the jobs, not the government.
Waiting for the applause, Speaker Gingrich.
32 years ago, we were in the same place. We had a failing president. He gave a speech on malaise. People wrote about the presidency being too big, nobody could do it. The Soviet Union was an offense. And a leader came along. He said, when your brother-in-law is unemployed, it's a recession. When you're unemployed, it's a depression. When Jimmy Carter's unemployed, it's a recovery. Nothing will turn America around more than election night when Barack Obama loses decisively.
Senator Santorum.
The last words Ronald Reagan said as President of the United States in his farewell address, he was concerned about the future of our country because we were forgetting who we were, didn't remember what Americans was really all about. I think that's what's the problem right now, is we have a president who doesn't understand what America is all about. America is a great country because we are a country that believes in God-given rights to every single man, woman, and child in America, and that we built this country from the bottom up, believing in free people to have that responsibility to live their lives in service to themselves, their family, their community, and their God. And in so doing, we transformed the world. We had a leader in Reagan who believed in you. President Obama is the new King George III, who believes in things being dictated from on high. We need to replace him to someone who believes in the American people again.
Governor Johnson.
My next-door neighbor's 2 dogs have created more shovel-ready jobs than this current administration. Balance the federal budget now. Not 15 years from now, not 20 years from now, but now, and throw out the entire federal tax system, replace it with a fair tax, a consumption tax that by all measurements is just that. It's fair. It does away with corporate income tax. If that doesn't create tens of millions of jobs in this country, I don't know what does.
You just made your neighbor's dog very famous. When we come back in just 1 minute, the final round, we'll be talking about the Republican ticket. We're back from Orlando, Florida.
All right, one of the coolest tools that we've had tonight from Google is the word clouds that you put together. Explain what you've got in this one.
Well, so this word cloud takes a look at the other category. We had a lot of categories people could submit questions to: national security, immigration, foreign policy, healthcare. Then we had an other category, a category where you could put questions about whatever your issue is. And this word cloud shows the words people used in those questions the most.
All right.
So the bigger the word, the more often it was used.
What stands out to you, Chris?
Obama. That's all the Republicans really want, is somebody who can beat Barack Obama and possibly Gary Johnson's neighbor's dogs.
Yeah, that's going to show up. We're going to do a word cloud on his dog. But in addition, we've got Constitution, we've got Congress, we've got tax. Perry, I mean, that's the candidate name that jumps out from that particular word cloud.
Well, look, the whole crux that the Republicans are looking for right now is who can beat Barack Obama. That's what it basically comes down to, these folks. They're watching these debates, they're thinking about it, but Obama looms over the Republican Party, and right now the question is, who is the dragon slayer for the GOP that can do this for him? It's tough.
All right, we're back to the debates live.
Welcome back to Orlando for our final round, our final question from YouTube. Our wild card question comes from Darrell Owens in Richmond, Virginia.
If you had to choose one of your opponents on the stage tonight to be your running mate in the 2012 election, who would you choose and why? And why would this person help you make the country better?
Again, if you had to choose a running mate, one of the people on the stage with you, who would you choose and why? 30 seconds down the row. Governor Johnson.
Sorry. Well, that would be the guy 3 down, Congressman Paul. And that would be the notion that this country is about liberty and freedom, and that right now we are facing an extraordinary crisis, that if we do not address it now, we're going to find ourselves in a monetary crisis that is going to leave us all with nothing. And if we want to look at an example of that, that would be Russia, that experienced a monetary collapse that in our lifetimes may never require. We need to avoid that now.
Senator Santorum, who would you choose?
I would pick someone who would do what I have articulated I would do as President of the United States. That's what a vice president should be, someone who would follow through on what you promised the American public to do.
You have 8 to choose.
And I would say that, right now that, the guy that I'm agreeing with most up on stage is probably the guy to my left. So I would say that Newt Gingrich would be the guy that I would pick as someone who would follow through with what I'm saying.
Speaker Gingrich.
Yeah, I'm going to disappoint those in the audience who want this to be a Hollywood game. I don't have any idea who I would pick as the vice presidential nominee. What I do know is it would have to be a person capable of being president of the United States, and that would be the first criteria. These are all good friends of mine. I couldn't imagine hurting any of their feelings by choosing one tonight.
Congressman Paul, heard away.
I don't plan to make a choice at the moment because I am on national polls. It seems like I'm in third place now. I think it would be inappropriate. As soon as I'm one of the two top tier, then I will start thinking along that line. But right now, I'm going to defer and just work very hard and make sure that I stay in the top tier and then eventually be one of the top two contenders.
Governor Perry, how do you answer Darrell Jones?
Well, staying with the game show idea here, I don't know how you would do this, but if you could take Herman Cain and mate him up with Newt Gingrich, I think you would have a couple of really interesting guys to work with.
I don't know how you do it.
Governor Romney, Darrell Owens would like an answer.
There are a couple of images I'm going to have a hard time getting out of my mind. That's one, and Gary Johnson's dogs are the other, I'll tell you. I'm going to go with Newt on this, meaning I'm going to subscribe to his same view. I know I'm going to disappoint. But my view is if you pick a vice president, if you're lucky enough to become the nominee of this party, picking a vice president is to be something you give a lot of thought to, a lot of evaluation to, and you want someone who, without question, could become the president of the United States. These people could all fill that position. Any one of them would be a better president than what we have now.
Governor Romney, I hate to follow up here, but you called Governor Perry unelectable based on his Social Security.
Actually, I didn't use that term, but the newspaper did. That happens now and then. But the point is still, I think that there are some problems that exist in each of our backgrounds that make it harder for us to get elected. I hope we get elected. I hope one of us gets that White House. I think we will, because I think this president has failed miserably. But I'll tell you one thing. Governor Perry and I disagree on some issues. I think I probably disagree with everybody. We all have different views on different issues, but one thing's for sure. We all agree that President Obama needs to be former President Obama, and we're going to make that happen.
Congresswoman Bachmann, back to the original question.
Obviously, we need to have a strong constitutional conservative, and that's what I would look for in a vice president. But I want to say this as well. Every 4 years, conservatives are told that we have to settle. And it's anybody but Obama. That's what we're hearing this year. I don't think that's true. I think that there's any year, President Obama has the lowest public approval ratings of any president in modern time. He hasn't gone to the basement yet. It'll be a lot lower than what it is now. That's why we need to choose a candidate who represents conservatives and constitutional conservative positions.
Mr. King.
This is a game, and it is hypothetical. I'll play the game. If Governor Romney would throw out his jobs growth plan and replace it with 999, he has a shot. If he does not, I would probably go with Speaker Gingrich, who I have the greatest admiration for, in all seriousness, because of his history and because of his depth of knowledge. I could go on because I have respect for everybody up here, but it's a game.
It is a YouTube question. Governor Huntsman.
I'm tempted to say that when all is said and done, the two guys standing in the middle here, Romney and Perry, aren't going to be around because they're going to bludgeon each other to death. But I'm also reminded of about 4 years ago, we had two frontrunners in similar situations. One by the name of Rudy Giuliani, I think, and the other by the name of Fred Thompson. They seemed to disappear altogether. I can't remember where they went. But I would have to say, since Chris Wallace doesn't qualify as somebody on the stage, so I can't pick one of you, that Herman Cain, because of his selection of ties, the fact that we both apparently agree with the gold standard, wearing the yellow ties here tonight. And because of the good neighbor policy, 999 mixed with my tax policy would be the most competitive thing this nation could ever achieve. I'd have to say Herman's my man.
Candidates, thank you very much. That is it for our debate tonight. Our thanks to the candidates and their staffs. A big thank you to our debate partner, Google, and the Florida Republican Party. To all the great people here in the Orange County Convention Center, and of course the state of Florida. They could not have been more hospitable. Stay with Fox News Channel, America's election headquarters, all the way to the general election and the inauguration.